Welcome in, everybody, to Betting Pros. It is me, Joey P, Joe P Zapia. It's time to place your bets, everybody. And today we are betting on the NBA playoffs. That's right. We got play-in games. We got playoffs already set for some teams. And to help us break it all down, the spitting statistician himself, the one, the only Dane Martinez, back again talking some NBA with us. Dane, it's great to have you back on the show. I love when you're talking the basketball with us, or as I like to call it, the shooty hoops on occasion.
You know what? I need to use that name. It's not in my vernacular just yet. I got to get shooty hoops in.
It's the shooty hoops. You got to play a little shooty hoops. And look, before we even get to the breakdowns of Dane's predictions for the playoffs, I want to pick his brain about all this stuff. We have play-in games to talk about as well, starting on Tuesday. So we have the New Orleans Pelicans, the 9 seed, taking on OKC at the 10. Then you have the Lakers and Minnesota at the 7 and 8. And then on the other side of things, on the East Coast side, you've got Toronto at the 9, Chicago at the 10, Miami and Atlanta at the 7, 8, trying to play in. So the play-in tournament's a fun thing. Dane, I want to get your take on what's going on here because recent news here with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who's not going to be available for that game against the Lakers. It seems like the Lakers kind of are getting a hall pass to go right into the playoffs. Do you see that the same? And how do you see the rest of those teams shaking out in the West and in the East to get into the playoffs?
Sure, Joe, and thanks for having me, as always. On the Western side of things, yeah, I do think it sets up for the Lakers, right? First of all, they're the home team in that play-in game, right? As the current 7 seed, all they're going to have to do is win one game at home, and they have a Minnesota Timberwolves team who will be without Jaden McDaniels, who broke his hand in frustration, and without Rudy Gobert, who was pretty much told, keep your ball, your shooty hoops ball, and stay at home. We don't need you. We don't want you. And on the flip side, and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later on, Joe, the Lakers are getting hot at the right time. I remember last time I was on this show with you, I talked about who is healthy, whole, and kind of ready. And the Lakers are that. LeBron coming back. We haven't seen a lot of LeBron and Anthony Davis since they made some of the trades. But when they are healthy and whole, they've been playing well. So I do like LA. And I ultimately think the 8th seed in the West will be the New Orleans Pelicans. Okay. They host Oklahoma City. I think they're a better team there. And then if it holds that way, it would be New Orleans going to Minnesota for one game to become the 8th seed. And I just don't like what I'm seeing from Minnesota right now, okay? They look like a team in turmoil. Remember, I also told you that I like New Orleans, and I think they have enough playoff experience after last year in the same round with guys like CJ McCollum, BI, and all. So I do think ultimately it will be the Pelicans in the 8th seed and the Lakers in the 7th seed. Over in the Eastern Conference, I'll take Toronto and I'll take Miami in these play-in games. I am leaning towards the home court advantage in these kind of one-game play-in scenarios. So I do think that Miami takes care of Chicago. And the Raptors, Joe, there is a huge home road split for the Raptors. So it's good that they are the 9 seed kind of hosting that 9-10 game. Toronto's 27-14 at home, north of the border, and then 14-27, the exact inverse on the road. So I think they get that done. And what we will be looking at is Chicago and Toronto game for the final seed. And I like Toronto. I think Toronto can wind up in the 8, but Miami will wind up as the 7 in the Eastern Conference.
All right. Just to look ahead to, we have the Lakers right now, 7.5-point favorites against the T-Wolves. You have the Bulls, 5-point underdogs against the Raptors, and OKC, 5-point underdogs against the Pelicans. Again, that one at home there. And lastly, the Miami Heat, 5-point favorites at home. So depending on what you want to do there. And that number with the Timberwolves has moved since that news comes out with the Lakers too. So a lot of things moving and shaking, and that's why you stay on top of things with the Betting Pros app, so you know all the news that's breaking and what's going on and how the lines change. That's why it's a very useful thing. So if you haven't already, download the app so you can stay tuned to all that stuff. Dane, I want to ask you a question before we start breaking down potential conference winners on either side. You mentioned the Lakers maybe getting hot at the right time. Is there somebody else in either conference to you that's a team that's really hitting their stride right now that you think is going to be very dangerous? And it could be, one of the top teams. It doesn't matter. And then in the inverse, is there a team that you think is kind of dragging, kicking and screaming into the playoffs that could be an early exit?
Sure. So, my answer for the first one is the Lakers. Again, they needed to be healthy. LeBron missed a ton of time. It's very rare in this Lakers season, especially, Joe, if you remember, after the trading deadline, right? The Lakers made a lot of moves primarily to add shooting around LeBron and AD. The Lakers team was one of the bottom 5 in the NBA in terms of their three-point shooting all season long. Then they make some moves. D'Angelo Russell as a key one who can certainly shoot it from beyond the arc. I think that added element plus a LeBron James and AD healthy, and quite frankly, you know this, Joe, like LeBron can flip the switch. And now all of a sudden it matters to LeBron, right? Now all of a sudden these things are important. And in my kind of the way I'm gaming it out, as the 7 seed, they would take on a Memphis Grizzlies team. Memphis as the 2 seed in the Western Conference. And Memphis has been a great team all season long. But as you know, Joe, there's been some kind of controversy with Ja Morant, and they are still a relatively young, inexperienced team. I always say this, Joe, there's levels to this, right? And LeBron has already ascended all of those levels. You kind of need to progress. And I could see the Lakers, while healthy, whole, and ready to go, upset Memphis in a 2-7 matchup. So that would definitely be one of them. On the inverse, Joe, and I hate saying this as a New Yorker and as a Knicks fan, but I think the Knicks are getting bounced, and I don't even think it's going to be that close against Cleveland. And here's why. 2 main reasons. One, Julius Randle's been out, since the end of March, with an injury. He hasn't gotten back in. But the bigger thing is this, Joe. It goes back to their head coach, Thibodeau. Thibodeau is a coach who demands maximum effort, and kind of wrings his guys out, works them to the bone all season long. I don't know how much fuel is left in the tank for this Knicks team as they get to the second season. And quite frankly, you saw this last year as well, Joe. You saw the Knicks get into the playoffs, and then, Trae Young with his hair balding at Madison Square Garden. They couldn't do much after that. And it really did look like they ran out of gas. And I'm worried that still under the guidance of Tom Thibodeau that we may see the same thing against the Cleveland team that could have one of the better starting 5s in all of the NBA, and I think is right to be a surprise and show some people that they're better than expectations.
Yeah, Cleveland right now in that first game, they are heavy favorites, minus 215 there to win that contest. So not surprising there. All right, let's talk about the conferences. Let's talk about the West right now. The Suns are the favorites at plus 200, and the Nuggets at plus 330. Again, this is over at bettingpros.com. You have the Golden State Warriors at plus 360. Then the Memphis Grizzlies at plus 550. Your Lakers that you keep talking up here, plus 1200. The Clippers at plus 13. So obviously, Suns are a heavy favorite for a reason. They've kind of earned this position here. Do you think the Suns have what it takes to run the gauntlet, go through the West, and be the team to represent them in the finals?
I think they have what it takes, Joe. No, it all depends on how you frame the question, right? Like, do they have what it takes? Yes. Will they actually do it? That's what I'm not so sure about, Joe.
Well, let's talk about the betting strategy for that then. So if they have the goods and they're 2-1 favorites, then you want to put units on, let's say, the Phoenix Suns and who's the end?
Sure. So if I look in the East, in the Western Conference, and I'll say something similar about the East, right? As it plays out, I am expecting in the second round for there to be a 1-4 Phoenix versus Denver matchup. Okay. And I think quite frankly, the Western Conference champion will be the winner of that series. Okay, I believe that maybe the Lakers can upset Memphis, but even if it's Memphis, I don't think they're the cream of the crop. I actually think if you want to put some interesting money somewhere else for an upset in the first round, even though seed-wise it wouldn't be an upset, everyone and their mother, Joe, is sleeping on the Sacramento Kings. Okay, this is a 3 seed. This is a team that scored 121 points a game, the number 1 offense in the NBA all season long. And it feels like people were just waiting for the shoe to drop. And it never did, right? They get a Golden State team that's obviously a heavy public favorite in that series, right? I think Sacramento is over 2-1 just to win that series, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sacramento can hang with them. Not only are this the 1 and 2 scoring teams in the NBA, but the Warriors turn the ball over a ton. Sacramento has one of the best assist to turnover ratios in the league, so I wouldn't be surprised if that series goes longer, or if even the Kings can get past the defending kind of, dynasty that is Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. But because of all of that uncertainty I'm talking about in the 2-7 and the 3-6, ultimately, I believe Denver and the Suns will face each other in the second round of this Western Conference playoffs. And I think the winner of that wins the conference. So if you don't want to bet Phoenix, for me, it would be the Denver Nuggets. They were a number one seed for the entire season, but they did kind of coast towards the end of the season, resting Jokic a little bit. They knew they had it locked up. I do believe they are experienced enough and can get into that flow. I'm really excited about a Nuggets Suns potential second round. And if you're looking to get any value, take the number one seed all year long against Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Monty Williams, and the crew.
Just so you know, everybody, Sacramento plus 1,800, just in case
Yeah,
you
they
feel
are.
like they can
Yeah,
really
they
go
are.
crazy.
I
There you
mean,
go. There's your fun
yeah,
wager. It's good to have
it
a
is.
fun one. You throw a
They're the
smaller
number
unit
one
on that.
offense, Joe, in the NBA, have been all season
You
long, but
know me. I
nobody
like to watch the
believes in
world
them.
burn, so I'm all about
Nobody
it.
believes in them.
I'm all for it. The NBA Eastern Conference Finals group. You have the Milwaukee Bucks at plus
Yeah.
115. Then you have the Boston Celtics at plus 195. The Sixers at plus 420. Then you have the Cavs at plus 1,400. The Knicks at a higher number, let's just say plus 4,000, and the Heat. So really, this feels like a three-horse race. That being
Yeah.
said, do you have a favorite here of these three? I know this is kind of shuffled back and forth, throughout the season in terms of who the best in the East is. And now that we're getting to the playoffs, who do you think is the team that's built properly to kind of go through the playoffs now? Because the regular season is one thing, playoffs we all know is another.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, last time I was on here, we were kind of in the throes of the regular season. And I
Mhm.
remember you asked me, everyone thought it was a Milwaukee Boston tier and then
That's right.
everyone else. And I came back and told you, no, the Philadelphia 76ers belong
Mhm.
at the same level. And they kind of have gotten hot over the last month. They did close that gap. Embiid is now thought of on the same level as Jokic for the MVP award, right? So, unlike in the West, where I think the 1-4 winner will ultimately win the conference, in the East, I think the 2-3 winner will ultimately win the conference. I don't expect many upsets in the first round. I do think we're going to be Milwaukee versus Cleveland and then Boston versus Philly. I told you here last time, Joe, that with all love and respect due to Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm looking to fade him. I'm looking to beat him. Why?
Mhm.
Because he's that number one alpha dog. I don't necessarily believe in or respect the Middletons, the Holidays, the Brook Lopez's of the world to be the Robin to the Batman. Okay, I
That's
think
fair.
you need. I think you need that second and third guy. And I think, Joe, to do a baseball analogy, right? You need that SP2. You need that game two
Oh, sure.
starter. And I think that Milwaukee has a true ace and then some game three starters. You know what I mean? And so I think Boston and Philly really have what it takes. The interesting part is they're facing off against each other if the chalk holds in the second round. And that, I think, is going to be the series of the NBA playoffs if it does come to fruition. But I'm going to
Mhm.
stick to my guns here, Joe. I like the Philadelphia 76ers. I think they can get through Boston. I think they can get through Milwaukee as well. It's just hard because those two teams facing off, it really sucks that one of them will not make the conference finals. But I'm sticking to it, Joe. Give me the Philadelphia 76ers in a slight upset as the 3 seed.
I like it. Embiid certainly making his MVP push, that's for sure. Lots of conversation about that going on. That's been a hot
Yeah.
topic in the last week or so. And before we get to some combinations of some of these teams, because there's some really good numbers on these that I want to get to with you. Don't forget, if you're watching the video on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, click that little bell till it goes ding for notifications. And if you drop a comment with some of your picks here, or just have some fun, about these two handsome bald guys talking basketball, whatever it might be, you might win an opportunity to get a premium upgrade of your BettingPros subscription. So when you have premium, betting becomes a whole lot easier. They have the tools to help you cash more bets, plain and simple. And if you don't want to wait for the giveaway, just go to bettingpros.com/upgrade and start betting smarter, not harder today. But why not try to get some free stuff? Again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Betting Pros. We're growing every single day. And of course, make sure you drop a comment below with some of your NBA picks, because we'd like to hear from you as well. Now, Dame, if you like the 76ers, how about plus 1,400 for the Sixers versus Suns as a final? That number is on the board. Looking at some of the other ones, the Sixers and Nuggets plus 2,100 on the board. The Sixers and Golden State Warriors plus 2,200. So certainly you're getting some really good numbers here. If indeed we are in a race here where it's pretty obvious in the East which teams we're focusing on, and barring something crazy happen in the West, there's some real potential to make some big money here with some of these combo bets you could do of who's going to make the finals, because there is a whole lot out. And the minimum one, the number one on the board, is already 5-1, which is the Bucks and Suns, which is something that you are fading completely. I feel like just about.
I am. I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. I definitely think there's a universe there for Phoenix to make it, right? Remember, though, Joe, they just haven't been together much, right? After the Kevin Durant trade, he gets himself hurt in warm-ups of his first home game, and we haven't seen much of him.
Is there a more Kevin Durant thing to happen than that? Let's be honest.
No, there is not. The more thing would be him to do it again in the actual playoffs and get hurt in the actual playoffs, I think. But don't get me wrong. I do believe that over the course of the playoffs, the Phoenix Suns can kind of ripen into form. And that's why I say if they get past Denver in that second round, then I will be all aboard and hop on the bandwagon if there is any room. So to be honest, because of the way I framed the winner of this series and the winner of that series, I don't know if I'm betting these combos yet. Okay. You know what I mean, Joe? I think I might
There's
wait.
Some great numbers, though. If you've got an early feel, though, Dane.
There are.
Plus 1,400 on the Sixers and Suns, plus 2,100 on the Nuggets and 76ers. I mean, that's
but here's the
some
thing.
big numbers.
But I like Philly, right? Their number just to win the East without having to parlay it, in essence, with the Western Conference champion is already a nice number. Why am I going to get greedy? And if I like, say, Denver, or if I like Philadelphia, I don't know that this is the pond I'm fishing in to get, complex and elaborate by, in essence, parlaying the Eastern and the Western Conference champs. But yes, if you do want to subscribe to everything I say, then go ahead and bet that combo and anchor it with the 76ers.
I think what you've done for the audience, which is really astute, is I think if you have a strong feeling about one side, and it seems like the Sixers are the side you have a side on, right? You feel pretty strong. Then you can spread out between 2 or 3 in the West, and with smaller numbers. Then when you get past the first round or second round of the playoffs, then you can make a more aggressive number, because I'm sure it'll get cut down in half at least, if not by 2/3. But that's still going to be more like 5-1 or somewhere in that range anyway. So interesting, to get in early a smaller number and then continue to double down if indeed you feel strongly. And look, other people listening might not agree with you. They might not think the 76ers are that team. But if you do, or you feel like the Nuggets are that team, or you feel like if you feel strongly about one side of these conferences, there's a fascinating angle to take and then double and triple down as you proceed with the playoffs.
I think that's fair. The other thing I'd say, Joe, and you see this with some of the series that we know already at this point, right? There's just so many options. You could bet number of games for the series. You could bet series spread, right? You can bet in many cases, what would the series be after the first 3 games, right? So for lack of a better term, I'm not sure that I want to tie my money up in escrow, especially if I'm going to be backing Philly, they're going to be dogs probably against Boston in the second round, if that's how it comes, right? So I might save some of my bankroll to have them win that series, or have them be up 2-1 after 3 games in that series, as opposed to kind of going for the gusto. But yeah, all you need is $1 and a dream, brother, man.
Love it. You can tell we're both from New York, can you? All right, so give me this here. Let's live the dream. NBA Finals right now. These are the numbers. The Bucks are the favorites at plus 240. Which I think is fascinating, because the same reasons you say, where's the Batman, where's the secondary grouping? I'm with you on that. Boston Celtics plus 360. The Suns plus 500. It's a pretty good number for the Suns if you believe that the West is a little less competitive potentially. It's a really good number for them. Then they just have to have 4 games bounce their way, in June.
Sure.
76ers, this is where the number jumps considerably, plus 850. The Nuggets plus 950. The Warriors plus 950. Then you have Memphis and the Lakers and the Clippers kind of pulling up the rear here. So the Lakers, if you love the Lakers to get hot with LeBron James, you think they can do it, plus 2,700 to win it all. Look, anything can happen in the playoffs. Teams get hot. We've seen it all the time. But let's focus on what we know right now. If you are spreading units between, let's say, 2 teams, is it Sixers and who?
For me, it would be Denver. For me, it would be
Denver.
Denver. If you see in all of these markets, the fact that Phoenix is a favorite over Denver, I understand, right? Because of the additions they made, most notably Kevin Durant, and how everybody thinks that, in their final form, they will be dominant. And that's fine. I can buy that. I understand why people think that. But that is inherently discounting the Denver Nuggets, who were the best team in the West the entire season and may have the 3-time defending most valuable player on their roster. So when you put those things together at a number where you said was kind of after the gap down, I think that would be the best value. I'd be looking at Philly. I'd be looking at Denver as those teams that I think are undervalued and underrespected going into the bracket.
All right, so let's have some fun. Give me your prediction for Finals MVP. Is this just the year of Joel Embiid where he just runs the table? Is it the Denver Nuggets side of things? Like, where do you go if you're throwing it out there? When we get to the big dance here, who do you think takes home the trophy?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? I'm talking about Denver. I'm talking about Philly a lot here, Joe. And those are the two guys who are the top two favorites, along with Giannis, for the NBA MVP, right? So wouldn't it be crazy if these two guys are 1-2 in the MVP and we do in fact get a Denver-Philadelphia final, and one guy has the ability to not only win the championship, but kind of upstage the other big man in the post who won the MVP? That is something I would be absolutely looking for, especially, Joe. The Nuggets and Sixers played each other late in the regular season in a game where Joel Embiid sat out for rest, and it was interesting to think that, maybe they didn't want to go heads up, but these two guys who have been dominant in their position over the last couple of years, I really would love to see the two of them battle it out with an NBA Finals on the line. I will throw out one other name though, Joe, because again, the way you asked the question, I do believe the Phoenix Suns can be right and roll. But in that scenario, I gotta believe that Kevin Durant is the runaway favorite from within the Suns as that MVP. So I would actually look at a guy like Devin Booker. Okay, Devin Booker is also someone who can score 50, is entrenched in the system, is gonna defer, but only somewhat. It's an easy narrative to write, Joe, if the Suns do in fact get to and win the finals, that all the pressure would be on Durant, that all the attention would be on Durant, and that it was Booker who actually had the better series. So Devin Booker is an interesting name, and I bet you can get Booker for a lot better odds than you can get the Phoenix Suns in general. So if you want to have some shares of the Suns, I would consider Booker as a Finals MVP as well.
There you go. Great stuff from Dane Martinez, as always. Make sure you follow him on the Twitter machine for more great stuff. For Spittin' Speeds, again, SPITTIN SPEEDZ. There you go. That's the man. Dane, it was always great to talk to you, my friend. Always great to have you on the show, give you your insights. I know you're going to enjoy the playoffs, that's for sure. I'm sorry your Knicks seem to be, running out of gas at that time. But maybe you write a nice, strongly worded letter to Coach Thibodeau and ask him to slow down and say, hey, remember, there's a whole other season here called the playoffs that kind of matters too. What do you think? Strongly worded letter? That's the way to go?
Definitely. Right. Absolutely. Definitely. I'll do that. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Don't forget, everybody, make sure you download the free BettingPros app to make all your bets, to track all your bets, to do everything you need to do. Drop a comment below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel of BettingPros, youtube.com/BettingPros, and you might win a free premium giveaway, or just upgrade yourself right now. Do something nice for yourself. BettingPros.com/upgrade. That's the way to do it. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Dane Martinez, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.